Hi, it's Hazel, and welcome to my channel, Hazel and Aka Design. I am going to be working in this art journal today, and there are a few concepts that I want to sort of all pull together. Now, those of you who've been around a while have seen this book before. I'm not doing a flip through in any sense of the word. I did pick a spread that had been gessoed. Now, just by way of background, this was a book, you probably have seen it. It's kind of oversized. It's a little out of, the proportions are a little bit different than we're used to. Anyway, I started this book several years ago when I saw Carrie the Crafter altering a similar book, or maybe it was even this identical book, in order to use it for art journaling. So the difference was that pages were removed, some were glued together, and there was a masking tape sort of reinforcement done at the gutter point, at the point of the gutter, to help with, keep things intact, but also to prevent liquid medium, paint or water, from seeping into the gutter and potentially ruining other spreads. So that's what you're seeing in the background. Now, I had pre-gessoed a number of pages. This spread was waiting. And what I've done to save time is, okay, you probably saw me, or you might have seen me show you this interior decorating book that had all these essentially paint swatches, or color swatches that tied in with the different decor that they were trying to show throughout the book. So that has been sitting off to the side of my desk here, waiting for just the right project. So I'm using something salvaged from a book. And the other big component here are these illustrations that came out of a Reader's Digest. So we know that a lot of us love the vintage Reader's Digest because they've got the great covers. And even though there seem to be a disproportionate number of stories in there about war and conflict and, he-men fighting, quite often there are a number of illustrations that are quite lovely. I thought I had some near me. An example of some others. Apparently, I must have put it away. Fancy that. Anyway, in the past, if you've been around my channel a while, you know that I have shown you masterboards that I've done using, still looking, still digging, using the illustrations from a particular story, because of course the colors and the style would automatically make the project congruent. Anyway, so this is what I have to work with, and I thought the reason I was attracted to using these right off the bat, even though maybe they're not the prettiest things in the world, is the fact that they have movement in them and they're essentially done like gesture drawings. So maybe this is the best example here. So you can see that there are just a few scribbles to indicate the guy's hair, the hands are indistinct, and those kind of organic, perhaps choppy lines indicate movement. So this is what I got out of the one story. Now you can see that there tend to be a couple of different colorways at play here. So these are pretty dark. These have, kind of more, maybe this one's in the middle, more yellowy tones. So what I did was I went through this book with all sorts of sizes and colors of chips, paint chips, and I pulled out a bunch that I thought could work. Because initially I thought, okay, I've got a gesso background, but what now? And originally, geez, my Band-Aid is all ratty. Originally I thought, well, I could pick up on that sort of pinky, orange, yellowy color combination that we often see in East Indian, prints, fabrics, imagery. But then I thought, okay, why don't I use the paint chips instead, because I'm going to get far more variation. And honestly, because I still have Trovember, the Collage Lab Kelly's challenge that went on in November. And one of her very first prompt, and I gather that this is a structure that she goes back to time and time again, and that's to begin with a grid. Now this is irregular in that it's not all going in the same direction. It doesn't cover the whole substrate. But I'll tell you what my thinking here was. Number one, it will provide some structure. But I also know that as people who read from left to right, we are used to entering a picture plane from the left. And our eye automatically follows repeating elements from the left to the right. So if we want to draw the eye into a picture plane, that's a good thing to know. If we want to stop the eye, we're probably going to pick something darker. Now, I obviously added some other pieces in here that will still provide some structure, but won't necessarily get your eye veering off. Plus, this is just the basis. I can also make you look where I want you to based on how I place these images. So now we know that I don't edit and I don't pause and wait for paint to dry and stuff like that. So, forgive me for that. Who knows, 2026 may bring a miracle to us. So what I have beside me is my disposable palette, a inch wide brush, and I thought, okay, if I want to unify this spread, add more to the background, tie this in, add another interesting element, because frankly these will be the last things to go in, and I don't even know if that's going to happen today. But so what I pulled was this Liquitex. Now I realize that it says stains and protects wood with a durable water-resistant finish. I've always used this on paper, and I love it because it's somewhat transparent. So I've got this stain, and you can see what color it is there. And I also just have a craft store gold. So I thought that this would be a unifying element. It would add a little metallic to it, and this of course would be a dark that I could use here and there as required. So I think what I'm going to do is just begin with the gold and start laying it down in places. We want to cover up the word horseradish. Now this is, again, it's not, the viscosity of it is not the greatest because this cost $1.25. So they're not going to put in a whole bunch of pigment into something that cheap. But that doesn't mean that we can't get an effect. So I'm just sort of dry brushing. These strokes are adding, they're serving a couple of purposes. They're covering up, to some degree, the elements that are underneath. Well, you can still read horseradish. I might need to be turning this so I can do kind of what I need it to do. Now, at this point, I'm kind of avoiding the, wonder what all this is here, but it adds some interest. Still, my brush was totally dry, and I'm essentially just, you know, kind of dipping the tips of the bristles and picking up just a teeny bit of paint. And so far, I'm resisting the urge to, you know, go back and forth. Deciding to go left to right would be obviously another way to add interest. At this point, I'm leaving my options open. Now, I would think that the odd little bit of paint getting onto the white border, paper border, book page border, will not be a bad thing. But still, I'm trying to my best to, at this point, not do that unless I feel the real need to do it. And again, I'm not attempting to totally obscure. There was a wound in the paper there, I guess. Maybe I'll just put a bit more over horseradish. And you know, these I just tore around. I used my tear ruler around them. But clearly, some of this is going to be further broken down. You know, I may just need that part. So, anything that isn't going to be covered by the dry brushing will still, I don't know, you probably can't see that, will still be, I still will have a chance to, you know, obscure it if I need to, cover it if I need to. Now, other than what I've told you, I do not have a plan. So this is kind of, you know, person kind of need with mixed media, well, or probably with art creation of all kinds. This is one of those things where you just have to accept the notion. If you want any spontaneity at all, you have to accept the notion that you're not going to start out knowing the answer or the destination. In this case, I knew I wanted to put this into this art journal as opposed to the many others that I have on the go. And I think, you know, eventually when I do a flip through, you'll understand why. See, and this virtually dries when it hits the paper, so I'm not worried about putting my palette on. Whoa. Oh, and I see I forgot to plug in my, sorry guys. I typically always have my phone charger attached so that regardless of how long a video goes, I'm never going to have my phone die because I've run out of battery. Maybe if I did it this way, it would be a little easier. So that, okay, so I've decided which substrate I want to use. I've decided which resources I want to use. So in other words, the Reader's Digest papers. And then my secondary choice about helping with the background was this book with all the color, the interior design book with all the color swatch. So that's all I know for sure. Now, because, you know, every project has, so you can see that I went back and forth, obviously, with my gesso. So that's why it's picking up these other, the paint is highlighting those gesso marks. So in a sense, it's almost looking cross-hatched in places. Now I need to do a wee bit here. And a wee bit. Oh, I cannot do horizontal. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect coverage. It just has to be an indication. And I suppose I could have left that white because it was perfectly white. It just made that border seem a bit wider. So I know that there are a lot of people out there doing mixed media videos, a lot of, you know, real artists, a lot of self-taught artists, a lot of people who just are playing and learning as they go through videos. I think there's a degree of that for everyone, to be honest. And I hope all of that inspiration and all of those people and all of the opinions and approaches and projects and ideas are encouraging you to give it a chance. Because Lord knows we all have access to either in our own libraries or in thrift stores, or library sales or whatever. We all have access to books that would lend themselves to being art journals. So in this case, you know, there would have been a few options. Fussy cut all those images and use the book that way and use the pages, you know, the scrap pages. Or, you know, or turn it into a glue book or turn it into an art journal. And because it would, you know, for most people, it would be kind of, my brush is so long, I'm practically hitting my phone. You know, for most people, it would be too busy to reuse as just a normal book. So craft paint is affordable for everyone. Sometimes you can find paint in thrift stores as well. This sort of a brush is cheap as can be. And as long as you don't let the paint dry in it, you will, you know, it'll last virtually forever. I have to say, and of course, I think I've said it before, and I'm sure others have, you should never leave your brushes in water. You will wreck the bristles, for one thing. And wetting the brush handle is going to weaken the glue that is holding the ferrule to the wood part, to the handle. So, and I've never done that. Oh, and the other thing is, once you wash your brushes, let them dry flat. Don't stick them back in the container you've got them in, because that's not going to be good either. And I have to say that, you know, again, this is cheap, I'm sure made in China. So sometimes you need to, sometimes the ferrule does separate from the handle. And I have very successfully used, what do you call it, Fabri-Tac, to glue it back on. You can see that the amount of paint I've used has varied quite a bit. Now I have this bit on my paper. I'm just going to use it rather than waste it. So I'm adding a bit more. I'm doing the horseradish again. And that takes care of that. Now, wouldn't it have been good if I would have brought some water? Oh, I do have a dirty paint water jar here. So I think, you know what? I'm going to keep my brush dry. And I'm going to add some of this stain now. It's just that you don't want your brush to dry out. Now, sometimes if a person is, you know, if it's just a momentary, you're just taking a break, you don't, and unless, you know, I have umpteen of these brushes, so I could have a brush for every color. If you were operating with just one brush and you don't want it to dry out, but on the other hand, you don't want it to be soaking wet either because you've just washed it. The other thing I sometimes use is just a little Ziploc bag or a length of saran wrap just to, look what a cool color that is. It almost reads as coppery, and you can see that it's pretty transparent. So I think in places I'm going to add some of this, and maybe just to have a bit of rhyme or reason, maybe I will do it almost like a drop shadow below these, you know, these things that I've glued down. Yeah, so if you wrap your brush in saran wrap or you know, enclose it in a bag, that will, geez, I usually use wax paper in between. Maybe I can just be careful. See, this almost reads like, oh, what is that distress oxide color called? Do I have it here? Wild honey. Anyway, I put out too much paint, I see. So, you know, it's just like in the past when I've been painting, say, walls in the house, and you don't want to have to wash your brush or your roller after, you know, between coats. I would do the same thing there. Just keep it in plastic. And if you want to take it a step further, in the fridge, just to keep it from drying up, or like I say, getting it wet and then realizing, well, I didn't want a soaking wet brush. Okay, what else? I've got to do this one. And again, I can pull that a bit just so that it's not too, you know, symmetrical. Oh my goodness, I put a lot of paint on there. I better have something to pick that up with. I hope that the way I've set this, position this book and my arm are not obscuring. See that? It dries so quickly that now that's in part because obviously it's ultra thin. I've forgotten how much I like this color. And it kind of doesn't hurt one little bit that it almost reads like copper. Again, you know, with this process, we have no real idea how much of this will even show when it's all done. But even those tiny little glimpses of what lies beneath, oh, I guess that's it for me. Even those tiny glimpses of what lies beneath are what, not, I shouldn't say even, those tiny glimpses of what lies beneath is what makes looking at, sorry, I just have to bring a piece of watercolor paper or something to. Now this artist series, it's not going to be the greatest paper. 300 GSM. Oh, it's from Dollarama. Oh, that was something that we did yesterday, or not, well, yesterday in my world. I don't know when it was in your world. This was part of something that we did in the Bible journaling live with Carol, Angela, and Jonna. Anyway, so rather than waste this paint, I'm just going to, oh, look at how it picks up the, that is quite the design. Now you can see that when the brush hits the paper after it's been reloaded, that it obviously deposits more paint than it does, you know, as you continue working. So it automatically is making some value changes. These look like, I don't know, something fancy or something like a worm. Multiple worms. Now I want to make sure that I have enough paint to cover this all over. This is a 8 by 10. Ooh, that's going to be bad. And you know, for people who fear the blank canvas, the blank page, this is a good way to, this is already less intimidating and could spark an idea rather than looking at a blank piece of paper. Okay, I've got it all covered at least a little bit, so now I can deliberately add some value changes. Let's build on this since there's a lot there to begin with. Again, if I were to spritz my paint, I would end up, you know, there'd be more, I'd have more freedom to move the paint about. But because I'm doing this dry brush technique, I'm sticking it out with my dry brush. And again, this is just a base. This isn't the masterpiece. So a person, you know, it's not the last bit of the paint that I have. I've got whatever is still in the bottle. So I can certainly come in at a future date and add more if I want. I could use a thinner wash type effect. I could keep building layers to get more depth, I could add a speck of black, but I'd want to mix that first and see if I like it. Okay, I don't think there's a speck of paint left on here, but I will just wet it, you know. Try to get, I wish I had a rag here. Oh, I do. Now this will prevent the brush from being ruined in the moment. Obviously after the video, I will take it to the sink and do a better job. And honestly, as paint dries in brushes, it does change. It does change the marks that would be made. Oh, that's not, grabbed the wrong one. I don't know why I'm trying to prove this point to you. You can see that this one, there's very little movement left there. Compared to this one, brushes are virtually, well, they're different brands, but fine hog bristle. So, you know, even if you don't get your brushes perfectly clean, they're still very much usable for this mixed media work. They just, you know, because like I said, as the paint dries in them, it changes the spacing or the spread of the bristles. Okay, this is all dry. So, should we, how long have we been here, by the way? 32 minutes. Maybe let's do a bit of positioning and see if the background calls for something more. Now, the way this is laid out, since I use the cherry stain, all of that seems to be down at the bottom. So maybe there's something here that would kind of introduce the same color up above. I don't know what resolution, what the color resolution is on the device you're watching on, but these two have, you know, some mauvey colors in them. I should pull out my tear ruler. So let's just start doing something and see. I'm going to play around with this. Okay, so I don't like that guy at this point. So I'm going to sort of tear him off there, which kind of gives me a value change. This one's lighter than this one. I can bleed this guy off the edge of the page. I could shorten him if I wanted to. I could use this guy here again as a way of, hope you can see, as a way of stopping the eye. So at this point, we've got pieces to play with. This guy, I would never put him over there because he's looking outside of the picture. Not what I want. Okay, let me see what else we have going here. So I'm kind of holding these things up to see how the item relates to what is around it. This is kind of the only mauvey thing here, so this might be good to keep in mind for this area. What else? This, I believe I said I would cut down, tear down the darkest parts of this and the lightest parts of this, because really the focal point is where I'm just eyeballing over here to see if I'm tearing it roughly where it needs to be. And again, the tearing is totally, it's, you know, artist choice. I could do it right below that guy's elbow. That really makes it tight. I could let some of that brown show. I could have it way down here so it introduces some lighter values that repeat the highlights on their faces. You know, it's like measure twice, cut once. So maybe for now, I will leave it with this repeating. If I want it gone, I can still do it. If I want this even tighter, I can get rid of that, most of that guy's head. So, you know, choices. Always, always choices. This may end up being the focal point and the unifying thing, because there's a lot of action there, a lot of pen work, and you know, probably the biggest crossover of including all the colors. So maybe let's keep this one off to the side and let these other guys be the supporting cast. This one is different in that her face is so much bigger than everyone else's. So that's another possibility for a focal point. And remember, in a past video, well, I'm sure I've said it more than once, there are the, there is that whole golden mean idea. So on any picture plane, sort of imagine it cut into thirds, horizontally and vertically, and where these things intersect, here, 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 and here, are sort of design-wise, those are great places to put a focal point. I think I would also like, again, you know, getting over the idea that, oh, I just cover that up. Oh. And also changing the shape and dimensions and size of these pieces is important. Now this guy could be looking up and in. And I do, even though I feel pretty confident about this seam between the two pages, I think that I do want some of these guys to overlap. Now I could also put this down here, and that repeats that, although that picks up on the mauve as well. This kind of works with these colors. Okay. I think because of this guy's expression and the fact that he's looking up, he needs to be in this corner. So let's just figure out, let's get rid of some of this at the bottom here. Just because we do want our grid to show. There is this active, you know, that zigzaggy line there. But I think I don't want this to be that big because he's not the leading man here. Just trying to roughly line this up with some point so that I'm getting see, I could probably live with that. And if in hindsight this white ends up being too much, there's always the possibility to do something about that when all the other elements are laid down. So it could be mark making, it could be going in, you know, with ink of some kind. I think in order to get most of these people in here, I'm going to need to practically bleed him off the edge of the page. So, glue thing. And I think it's pretty clear that I'm not going to finish this in one video. So I need to leave you with a cliffhanger. Who shot JR? That kept us going over a whole summer. From the end of the season to the fall. Oops, I said I was going to run it off the edge of the page. I left that little bit of gold showing at the bottom here. Okay, what else do we know for sure? Now, when I was taking art lessons and we would have our critique class, one of the things that our instructor always told us is you never want your four corners to be identical. There needs to be interest and let's just temporarily hold that there. She looks okay here too. And even though her head is sort of pointing that way, she's not looking out of the picture plane. She's kind of looking us dead in the eye. Let's see these guys. I kind of like this because this bleeds in here, that works there. This I can unify in some way after the fact, so let's glue this one down as well. I don't think we want, okay, I want to cover that white, so I'll have it there. I probably, maybe I want to have it run right off the page because I don't want it to be exactly like this guy over here. So let's see what we can see. I could also remove some of that bottom. And you know what? I think I'm going to, because these little itty bitty things that I am tearing off, I could take about ½ an inch off, may come in handy. later to spread some color around to unify things, or they can easily be worked into other. See, I wish I would have left that a little longer. Maybe I'll do it like so. Again, this is just a peek inside my head and my thought process. You don't have to do it this way. You probably don't do it this way. You probably don't ever want to do things the way I'm doing them. But I'm just explaining what my thought process is. If I bled this off the edge of the page here, then I have this unfortunate white area. Not the end of the world, because I could come up with a solution for it. But if I don't have to create problems for myself, I prefer not to. This paper, you know, because it's old and, whoa, that's a lot of glue. Old and not the greatest quality, you know, it's matte paper. It really takes the glue well and so on. So I'm butting it up against there. I'm butting it up against there. The space, which is uneven, is different than this guy over here, if that becomes part of your thought process. Okay, let's see. How long have we been here, by the way? 46. Okay, maybe we can go a little longer. I haven't ruled this guy and this guy out, but they're small now. They would be easier to tuck in kind of at the end if I have an issue. That might be good there. See, the other thing that I'm thinking is it's with something like this, if necessary, I could make this a lot narrower and use it as a top layer to overlap and fill in a gap. Same thing with these guys. So I'm going to leave them as kind of fillers in. Okay, I'm leaning towards having this here. So, how big a chunk do we want? I could have that bleed off the page there. So by lining this up again with this goldenrod piece here, I still have access to all of that there. I lose a little bit of the top of that guy's head, but, and it's offset from that. I think that's gonna be hunky-dory. But I always have to watch for wet glue because, you know, I'm kind of famous for, even though this is all scrap paper, destined for the garbage. Okay, that's the top, so I don't need to go all the way to the top with the glue. I try to stretch these these glue papers a little too far, and then sometimes I cause problems for myself. Doesn't help when this keeps lifting and moving. So I think I have glue on the surface of this at some point. So all my beautiful gold paint is gonzo. Okay, I said I could even have this go higher. Because we know that, you know, our eye will tell us that even though we can't see it, that guy does have, you know, a whole head. Okay. Sometimes just because it's easier to see, This is not very easy to do, by the way. It's easier from this side. Save it. Okay. Now we've got this girl. And we've got this. Now that orange is not as good as I hoped for. So I could actually have these two guys butted up against each other, which almost seems to have them read as one, especially because the colors are similar. And this guy's looking at this focal point. I feel confident enough that I can glue this down. And I want to cover that orange because I don't like it. So it is December 8th as I'm doing this video. You, of course, will see it at another point. It'll be airing at another point. Because it's longer, maybe I'll do it as a, okay, cover up the orange. Butt it up to here. Oopsie. Yeah, I like that. So I hope that if you celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa or, oh my goodness, my mind just went blank. What is the Jewish holiday? Forgive me. I hope that you are, making progress with your shopping, your cleaning, your baking if you're into that. Okay, I've got these 3 elements. This guy could go here, this guy could go here, this could go here to bridge this. So she's destined for this corner. Now, unfortunately, I wish that these colors worked better. However, that can be remedied with paint or ink or something. Just trying to get a feel for where this needs to be glued down. I guess the more I move it down, the more we're seeing of this cherry stain, the less we're seeing of that. This I can deal with, I would say. Let me stand up and see if I'm bothered by... What I'm trying to decide is whether I like that teensy bit of white there. And I think I do. Okay. Decision made, because the future of the free world depends on this positioning. The future of the free world depends on this positioning. So I think I've said in a recent video, or maybe it was a live, that we're not going to Denver this year for Christmas. Okay, what was I doing? Oh, I'm leaving a little space. Oh, too far over. Let's have that little bit of something, something. Is that a dirty glue mark? Dirty finger glue mark? Sometimes if you do this while it's fresh, or maybe that was in the background, because there are similar marks. And that paper will not take much erasing before it starts shredding. Okay, people, I cannot believe that this is actually happening. I said this guy would go here, but I think we need a variation in sizes. So, let's just this guy's really going to be shortened. And you know this, if you're unsure about where to cut, don't forget that one of the tools I've told you about in the past is the whole idea of a viewfinder. Is that what I want? Or is that what I want? Or is that what I want? Do you see how it helps envision what your choices might be? Okay, this guy is small now. So he kind of fills that gap. Let's have it cover some of that white and overlap that one. It's going to look, oh, she's so cohesive in what she does. Oh my goodness. It's just a miracle. Yeah, I was saying that we're not going to Denver to see my son and his family. So, what was I covering? Oh, that white. A little bit of that white. And look what I made, a little tiny white square there. Okay. So that meant that for the first time in umpteen years, we've needed to put a Christmas tree up. Because my daughter and her man are coming here on, it's almost like I'm short of people. But I do have these scraps here if I need more mark-making marks. Okay, let's position this guy. But it looks like does he need to be here? And this needs to be here. Maybe if I put him down here, he's pointing up. He can bridge the gutter here. And I still have room to position this. And then I have to do something there. Okay, I think I prefer that because here it looks as though he's pointing outside of the... where's my ruler? By this time I'm standing up, so if my voice seems to have changed, it's because of that. Let's cut this guy just past the elbow. It was an unfortunate amputation that needed to take place to save the painting. Okay, so again, I'm using my white spaces as a, that's me rolling my chair forward, as a way to keep things kind of straight and also not create some unfortunate white space, literally white spaces, that I have to worry about. So we'll put him up a little bit higher than his buddies. Not even with this one, not even with this one or this one. Just let him set his own level here. So yes, I had to put up a Christmas tree, and I must say, it's kind of an old one, but I like it. It's slim, and you know, when I put the lights on it many moons ago, I just don't take the strings of lights off anymore. So the lights are obviously the worst part of the job. So yes, we carried it up from the basement very easily, and now it's going to be, what size does this need to be? I dare not fold it, because if I don't trim, then I'll have a sharp fold. Maybe it needs to be a bit bigger to bridge some of this here. So yeah, I did the tree the other day, which is good. Have some gifts to wrap. We typically never do any cooking on Christmas Eve. This is decades now. So it was a case of maybe we treat ourselves to KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Chinese food, or something that someone else has prepared, especially back in the day when people needed to, you know, were still working, whether it was half a day or a full day or whatever. It just made it easier. And then because Lord knows there's a lot of eating that goes on. Okay, again, stand and see what's what. Yeah, I think it needs to be about there. I'm going to line it up with this, and yeah. And the other way, now of course, the dry brushing that I did was part of creating a background and unifying the two pages. But it can also, those same colors can be reintroduced and blur the edges, the sharp edges, or the edges of the images to help soften and what did I say I was doing here? Oh, up to this line. Soften and integrate the, if I go up, I can get that line too. Soften the sharp edges and add more interest, or solve a design dilemma if that is what is required. I think I need to give this a little more ease. Did I? Well, that one seems to be working well. Okay. Okay, my lovelies. Let me cover this glue. Let me have one quick look at whether or not any of these pieces solve a problem. So right now, the issues that I see are, this is very kind of, you know, different than the rest. See that yellow? I mean, it introduces some yellow on this side of, you know, this area of the piece, but it, I don't know, doesn't really grab me. We do have a similar issue in this corner. That Band-Aid is a joke. Maybe this would be better here. So by adding different sizes and shapes and values, you know, like this is a dark in this corner that's rather light, that it might be good there. This might be good here. I still have all these pieces. Now, there's nothing to say, like this is not so good here. So maybe that does something there. Maybe it's not wide enough. Maybe this is too wide here. Maybe it just needs that little ECG readout there. This is probably too... Okay, that might be a better choice here. We have all of this as well. I think I'm going to stop here just because this video has gotten a little bit long and I need time to think about this. It could be, oh, and this is kind of something here. Okay, what I was going to say is I need time to think, and I think I also want the chance to find a design solution. This is that guy's torso. To find a solution that is maybe paint-based first, or ink or whatever, something. I could do stamping. I could do stenciling. My options are a gazillion. So I'm going to ponder this. I think I'm pretty sure about this, so maybe I should just add that. It repeats that because it came from there. Okay, I'm adding that piece and everything else, but which way do I want it? Probably doesn't matter. Everything else will be either completed by the next time you see this, or I will do it with you next time I see you, assuming that, you know, it isn't something that's going to need a great deal of time or drying time or whatever. Okay. So this I will just clip to the page because otherwise these things fall out. I think it's a really good start, and I'm excited about where this will end up, but it's not there yet. So, oh, here's another little viewfinder. Paper clip. Wash my hands. Maybe change my bandage or take it off. Yeah, all of a sudden I noticed that there was blood on that one finger, so Okay, kids, that is it for today. I hope you're excited by this, and I hope that you look at those Reader's Digest illustrations with a fresh eye. Because, yes, I could have used these scattered all over, different pieces of ephemera. But the truth is, oh, did I nick that? But the truth is that I think it makes a bigger impact when it's all together. So, thank you, and we shall see you in the next one. Bye-bye.